Just as a disclaimer, we want you to know that some of the movies that we will be reviewing were shot in a different time and era where people of race and sex were not treated equally. We understand this and hope you do too. The movies or anything that happened on the sets are not the views of this podcast or what this show is intended to be all about.
Exactly. And we want to give due diligence in presenting the movie and not the views of the cast or directors or anyone involved. But we also feel it's necessary to let the audience know some of the background information to get a feel for what was happening at the time of shooting the film. Again, we hope you understand that we do not agree with everything that went on, and we just want to give out the information. And with that being said, hope you enjoy the show.
There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema podcast, our Twilight Zone series. I'm your host, Jimbo, and I'm joined once again by ADZ.
What's up, everybody? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for wherever you are in the world.
Yeah, today. we always get a little confused with where we're at during we record because Eric's usually just waking up, and I've been up for a while. It's always a different time when we record, so. Well, we are now on episode 15. I shot an arrow into the air. Don't forget, at some point during this episode, I will be dropping the secret word. Thanks to those of you that have already participated and sent me the email. So just be on the lookout, or be on the listen for the secret word. Go ahead, Eric. Take it away.
All right, episode number 15. I shot an arrow into the air. This episode debuted on January the 15th, 1960, so early in the year. It was directed by Stuart Rosenberg, and the story was by Madeline Champion, and the teleplay or writing credits go to Rod Serling. And I got a little bit of information about featured music here. It's a song entitled "And When the Sky Was Open" by Leonard Roseman. And that was just an extra tidbit that was added in to the main information in the title and heading. So go ahead, Jimbo, with the cast.
So for the cast, we have Dewey Martin. He plays Officer Corey. Dewey was famous for being in the movie The Thing from Another World. Edward Benz as Colonel Donlin. And Eric, I don't know if you caught this, but he has been in a movie that we have covered on the normal podcast. He was in 12 Angry Men.
Okay.
He was juror number 6 from that movie. So if you haven't seen that movie, it's a great movie to watch. I highly recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ted Otis played Pearson. And I think right here I'm going to throw in the secret word. The secret word for this episode is asteroid. So asteroid is the secret word.
Check.
Harry Bartell plays Langford. Leslie Barrett as Brant. Leslie was famous for being in Dark Shadows, the TV soap opera from 1968. He played Judge Hanley. So the synopsis for this episode is: after their spacecraft crashes on a barren planet, 3 men must find a way to survive with little water and hardly any shelter. So Eric, let's go ahead and take it away.
All right, so as we open the episode, we kind of have, again, some stock footage, it looks like, of maybe a rocket launch or something. I'm not exactly sure where they took this from, but then there's some conversation between two men. I believe this is this Langford and Brant. I think
I
these
think
are
so.
the only two guys really mentioned in the episode, or that have any dialogue. And so they're coming down to 5 seconds before launch, and you see again this stock footage of people like in a control room and the rocket being launched and stuff. And we find out some information about the particular rocket that was launched, and that it basically disappeared. They don't know what happened to it. It's off its trajectory. It's not on the radar screen or anything. And so these two men, Langford and Brant, are discussing what could have possibly happened, and it's really kind of unexplainable. So they go along and they talk back and forth, and they discover that their contact was broken. And then it's interesting. I didn't know this. I Shot an Arrow into the Air was a poem, I guess, or something like that, I think. And so I don't remember which one, Langford or Brant, whoever it was. He cites the poem in the dialogue as he looks out this kind of windowish type thing. Jimbo, did you have something?
No, it says something like, I shot an arrow into the air and we're at land, no one cares, or something like that. I can't remember the exact poem. Do you remember it?
Right. And then I think, do we come to a commercial break here? Yeah, this is the old-fashioned commercial break.
I believe so.
In the first scene, and then as we open up the second scene, we see not Corey, Colonel Donlin. He's writing. Yeah, he's writing in like his journal or a captain's log, and he's just describing basically what's happened is that they've crash landed. There's not much left of the aircraft, and he says it appears to be that we've landed on an uncharted asteroid. And so he's describing all the, all of his surroundings and such. And he kind of explains a little bit that he thinks that the electrical system went down, and that's what maybe caused the crash. And that there were there 8 crew members? Is that right, Jimbo? Or I think there were 8 total.
I was going to say, you only really see the 3 that are alive. Well, there's 4 alive. One of them's really severely injured,
right?
And they don't think he's going to make it. And then you see some other bodies on the ground. I think there was 8 or 9. I couldn't really make out exactly. I don't know if they actually said.
Right, and those guys, obviously, the ones there are several that didn't make it. I think there was like 3 or 4 that didn't make it. One man is critically injured, and then there are 3 other guys that seem to be okay. And they're having a discussion, and this guy Corey, oh man, this guy's a real piece of work. So he
only cares about himself.
Yeah, and he's telling the colonel, like, why are you writing in this journal, man? We're all about to die. We got to get our priorities right. And there's this instant confrontation between these two guys because apparently, I guess Corey believes since they've crashed that there are no rules anymore. There's no chain of command. Everything's just sort of tossed out the window for Corey at this point. It's every man for himself, and you can sort of pick up on that theme very early in the episode that he is not following the chain of command at all in the most critical time when he needs to do that. Jimbo, did you have something?
Right. Well, and I think something that Corey is starting to realize is, hey, especially the Colonel Donlin, he's saying, hey, look, we only have a limited amount of supplies here. Look around. This is a dusty, barren, no sign of water, no sign of life, nothing. So we need to basically gather our supplies, and we need to spread it out over this long period of time because we don't know how long we're going to be here. This may be permanent, but we need to spread this out so we can survive as long as we need to survive. And obviously, Officer Corey has a problem with that because the Colonel is trying to help the one that is critically injured. He's not dead yet, but he's actually, feeding water. And Corey takes offense to it. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, we have to survive. This guy's not going to make it. You know he's not going to make it. I know he's not going to make it. So why are we wasting our supply of water on this guy when we could use it to further progress our, time here? Maybe make us survive a lot longer than we need to, or than we should, or that we have to.
Right.
And so there's a big scuffle going on. They start fighting. He's like, by the time that they're fighting over the canteen that they were giving this man some water, the other gentleman's like, look, Corey, you're not got to worry about it anymore. He's gone. He's done. So we don't have to worry about his supply of water anymore. So, Eric, go ahead.
That's the main beef. That's the first bone of contention, sort of, between the Colonel and Corey, is about over the water and treating this man who's about to die. And then after he passes away, very shortly, early on in the episode, the next command from the Colonel is, look, we're going to get these shovels together, and we're going to get a shovel, and we're going to bury these bodies somewhere of the guys that didn't make it. And then one of the other guys, I think it might have been Pearson, sort of remarks to Corey, like, you want these, basically, in essence, you want these dead guys to help us, dig the hole, kind of in jest, because Corey, I mean, this guy's, I don't know, he's not the greatest of guys, and that becomes very evident very early. And he just is the guy that wants to go against the group on every decision. Like, if you were stranded on a desert island, this guy would, he would be the guy that wants to do everything against what the group might have voted on. So it becomes an issue of life and death here.
Right, and I think an important scene right here is right after the gentleman dies, Corey goes for his the guy's water canteen, and the Pearson, I believe it is, comes up to him and says, look, Corey, he's like, he grabs the canteen, he's like, look, he said, there's 3 of us that have to survive now. And he says, and if I see you flinching even once, he said, I will kill you. And that kind of sets the tone for what's about to happen here in later on in this episode.
Yeah, definitely. So we progress on a little bit, and again, there's this infighting between. This is actually where the man passes away. The first man passes away. There's just infighting now. There's just 3 of them left, and they basically come up to a decision, or the Colonel comes to a decision that they're going to scout out this what they think is an asteroid, and they decide that they're going to scout out let me back up a little bit. They have an overnight. They like sit around the fire. They spend the first night. The Colonel, I think, stays back at the camp, and the 2 guys, Pearson and Corey, they go and they sort of scout out the situation to see what they can find. Any water, any signs of life, any plants, or anything they can eat. Basically what you would do if you were stranded on a desert island or a planet or whatever.
Right, but the Colonel was very adamant that they stick together.
Yep,
is very adamant about this. So when they're sitting there talking, he's like, I told you guys to stick together. Where's Pearson? He's like, he went east, I went west. Once we got out there, so right then you see Corey sitting there, man. He is just guzzling the water down, and he's basically saying, where'd you get all the water? You only had like half a water. He's like, you sure you didn't see Pearson or anything? He said, I already told you, Colonel. He's like, we went different directions. So I think the Colonel is kind of a suspect of what happened to Pearson at this moment, especially the way that Corey has been acting.
Yeah, he comes. Corey comes back about 6 hours later, and you brought up something that was interesting. The Colonel asks the probing question. He says, well, you left with a canteen that was less than half full, and then you come back with a canteen of water that's like 3/4 full. So what? And when he's guzzling all that water, that scene you just referenced, he's like, where did all that water come from? I told you guys to stay together, and it had been like 6 hours, and Corey claims that he found Pearson dead, and that they got separated, right. And that he doesn't. Well, at first he says, I don't know where he's at, and then the Colonel keeps pressing him, and then he says, well, I found him after the water thing, the canteen thing. He tells the Colonel, look, I found him and he was already dead. And then so...
Well, he said he was face down.
Yeah.
I found him face down,
is
what he said.
And so
then he actually tells him, hey, he was dead. I'm telling you he was dead. He's like, well, where is he? You're going to take him to me. He's like, well, it's about 7 or 8 miles there. He's like, well, we're going now. He's like, we're not going to wait. He's like, I want to see his body. You're going to take me there, and I want to see for myself what happened.
Yeah, and so then the next scene, they're hiking over mountains and so forth, and the sun's starting to come up because it was night when they left, and Corey's complaining, "Oh, I'm so tired. I just hiked all this way. I don't want to go back out." So Corey in these scenes, he's staggering across the rocks, and then they hike for a while, and eventually they come upon Pearson's body. After a while, well, there's a couple incidents where Corey bends down to fake like he's tying his shoe, but he's actually looking for a rock. You can tell he wants to take out the Colonel.
Right.
Next, he has.
The Colonel actually has a weapon drawn on him the entire time because right now he doesn't trust this guy.
Yes, that's an important point.
And Corey's getting the idea man, I need to take this guy out too. My water's running out, and I know the Colonel's got some water over there. And you can tell it's hot, and you can tell that Corey he's really struggling right now.
Yeah, so they get to into this valley or ravine part of the mountain, and tensions are high. Corey says, well, they come to the place where Corey last saw Pearson, and Pearson's body's not there, so obviously he's not dead. It's important to note too that the Colonel took Corey's weapon. I think he had a pistol or whatever, and the Colonel took his weapon as well. And he has a weapon drawn on him. So they hike a little bit further, and then they find Pearson, who's, basically near death, and he's laying on the ground. And it looks as like he's hiked a certain little way farther. And when they come upon him, the Colonel asks him a series of questions. He gets down, and it looks like Pearson tries to draw something on the ground. He's trying to draw a symbol to try to give them some kind of information. He can barely talk. He's completely parched. He hasn't had any water. It's super hot. And go ahead, Jimbo.
Yeah, he puts his fingers in the sand, and he draws this two parallel lines, and he draws some sort of crooked lines in between them, connecting them, and you're like, what is going on? And he kind of points to the top of this mountain, and the Colonel's he's trying to tell me something. I don't know what he's trying to tell me. You know what I mean? So he's like, you told me he was dead. Where is he? Or did you just steal his water and hide his body? And he's like, well, I thought he was dead. So he didn't. Obviously, he never even really checked on his friend. Well, I guess his comrade. I wouldn't call him my friend anymore. He's like, but my tongue was swollen up. It was so hot out here. So basically, he left Pearson to die. So as he goes, then this is where I believe, is this where the Colonel drops the gun?
Yeah, exactly.
To go check on him?
Yeah, he goes to hike up the side of the ridge because Pearson, he dies basically shortly after he makes that little symbol in the ground. And then the Colonel hikes halfway, up this hill or mountain. He drops his weapon, and of course Corey seizes on this opportunity to take his weapon, and then they have an exchange, and then Corey ends up shooting the Colonel with his own, looks like a rifle type deal, and so the Colonel is dead, and Corey is, it's one man against the world basically at this point now. He's killed off almost his entire crew that crash landed, and then after Corey.
What I really thought, yeah. No, what I really thought was uncanny about this scene is that when Corey does shoot Colonel Donlin, that he actually shoots right through the canteen. So if he was thinking about taking his water, the canteen is actually, he shot the bullet right through the canteen. I thought, how ironic and how great is that he was probably trying to get the Colonel's water. So I just wanted to point that out real quick.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing. I definitely noticed that as well. Like, if you were trying to preserve water, that little bit of water to save your life, well, you certainly canceled that opportunity with shooting through the canteen. So then there's like a few minutes here of Corey just hiking by himself, and then some, well, I guess mid to end narration, not the end narration, but Rod Serling comes in here as he's hiking alone, and gives a description of Corey and really his character, personality, and he gives some insightful words here. And then Corey hikes for several scenes here for probably over a minute in the episode, and then he comes to, after hiking for several miles, he comes to like a clearing, And here's the big twist. Jimbo, you want to take away what the big twist is?
Yeah, he looks down and he sees a sign that says, what does it say, Nevada state line or something, and it says eat and sleep or eat and get gas or something. I can't remember, gas and food or something.
Yeah.
So the twist is that they never ever left Earth.
Yeah.
That they crashed back down into the Earth's atmosphere and landed basically in the middle of probably the Nevada desert somewhere, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
So, and you see the look on Corey's face. He's like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, and it's important to note, too, that the object that Pearson was trying to draw in the ground was the power lines that he saw. The looked like an H. Yeah, and then we see the Reno, Nevada sign, and then it all hits home to Corey like, oh man, like this was all pointless. I fought to save and spare my own life, and I killed everyone in my crew, and we thought we were on an asteroid, but we never left Earth, and it leaves you with that sunken feeling. That's what the episode does. It just really like all Twilight episodes do. You're with Corey. You just can't believe what just happened. It's pretty neat.
Right. So my question to you is: do you think that he will be court-martialed for the deaths of his fellow comrades, or do you think he will connive a way to get out of it?
I don't know. I actually thought about that question. I don't know. That it doesn't. The episode kind of leaves you wanting that resolution. Because it ends shortly thereafter with the end narration. But I think, obviously, if this were a real story in real life, of course, there would be ways an investigation would be opened, et cetera, et cetera. Everything would go back to Corey. And
well, but also at the time that this was, would there be enough evidence to prosecute him?
I think so. I think there would have been enough.
All he'd have to do is bury that gun and go get the canteen with a bullet hole in it and get rid of him. I mean, and then he can say whatever he wants. Hey, there was bandits out here. There was thieves. This is close to Las Vegas, Maybe it was the mafia. You know what I mean? It's just interesting to think. So, a couple little things that I found. We're going to go ahead and talk about this before we get into our opinions of this episode. The 1969 comic book Web of Horror #2 contained the 7-page story Breathless by Marv Wolfman and Bernie Wrightson, which was essentially a reworking of this plot. The twist in the comic book version, however, had the astronauts suffocating in their spacesuits because they didn't realize that they were back on Earth. So they never took their thing off, so they suffocated. This title was one that Rod Serling considered for a screenplay that would later air as the Twilight Zone: The Gift, which is almost the pilot. So that's later on in 1962. In the opening scenes in the launch control room, some semicircular flashing gauges are seen in the back of the control room. They are some of the gauges seen as part of the Krell facility on Altar 4 in Forbidden Planet in 1956. This is only one of 4 episodes of The Twilight Zone in which Rod Serling uses mid-episode narration. The other 3 are The Twilight Zone Walking Distance, which we've already covered, Time Enough at Last, which we covered with Burgess Meredith, and then Twilight Zone I Sing the Body Electric, and that's later on in 1962, I think season 3. Rod Serling was at a party when he was approached by a woman named Madeline Champion, who said, what would happen if 3 guys landed on what they thought was an asteroid and it turned out to be outside of Las Vegas? Serling was so taken with the proposal that he paid her $500 on the spot and gave her on-screen credit for having suggested the story idea. It was the only such suggestion that he ever turned into a script for The Twilight Zone.
Now that's cool.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The plot twist of Corey finding the telephone poles and sign reading Reno 97 miles and realizing that he had been on Earth the whole time will later be adapted as the twist ending of Planet of the Apes in 1968, featuring the Statue of Liberty. Like this episode, the initial drafts of the film were written by Rod Serling, and I think that's pretty cool. I did not know that.
I didn't either.
The men all agree that they must be on an asteroid. Space service personnel would never ever consider such an absurd hypothesis, as they would know that an asteroid cannot support any kind of atmosphere, nor can it have Earth-like gravity. I'm not a scientist, but that's still pretty cool.
Yeah.
Near the end, after Corey has killed Colonel Donlin, Corey is sitting on the ground and drinking from his canteen. There is vegetation clearly visible behind Corey. Asteroids do not have vegetation.
No, they don't.
And at the end, Corey finds the telephone poles, highway, and 3 signs. One of the signs is a Nevada State highway marker that is just a simple rectangle with the state name and highway number on it. Nevada State highway markers, both in 1959 and present, have a crude map of the state and the highway number on the square upper part of the map. So, Eric, go ahead and tell me your thoughts on this movie and what's your takeaways from it. Or, sorry, this episode and their takeaways from it.
Right. I thought it was a great episode. One of the things that we've talked before that makes the Twilight Zone so great is they weren't afraid to approach difficult or deep topics like morality, life and death, and the afterlife. And this one definitely touches on morality. You're left with the question, is it okay to kill in order to save your own life? That's a philosophical question that people have talked about for down through the ages. And Corey in this episode really has a survival of the fittest type mentality. He here's a quote. He says, Colonel, this is a jungle where only the tough animals survive, and they don't do it according to the rules. And then here's another quote. He says, you're in trouble, Colonel. You were looking for morality in the wrong place. And that's the exchange that they have, like on the side of that mountain in the ravine after they found Pearson. And he doesn't want to give a dying man any water to save his life. I mean, this guy is the ultimate antagonist, and he's going to do whatever it takes to save his own skin, so to speak. And you're left with a lot of those questions. Is it right to kill in order to save your own life? And I just think it's great that all of these episodes are great in their own way. But they're willing to do that. They're willing to approach those tough topics with great stories behind them. And it just makes it a great episode.
Right, and you sit there and you start thinking about these episodes, and you're like, okay, what would I have done if I was in this situation? If I was Colonel Donlin, would I have done things differently? I'm hoping I would have the compassion that he had for his crew. And then, you see yourself as part of like the antagonist. What's his name? Dewey?
Corey?
What's his name? Corey. Yeah, like Corey. And, you start seeing yourself, well, I probably would have done some of the same stuff Corey did. There's that whole moral good versus evil, survival, non-survival, sacrifice, love, compassion, but independence, and that you need to, hey, I got to survive too. I got a family too. And you always, I always think about that movie. What was it, Alive, where the airplane crashed, and they actually had to eat some of their fellow passengers in order to stay alive for a certain amount of time. Now, I don't know what kind of mentality, because I've never been in that position or that predicament, but just to get through, seeing people die and all that, man, I don't know. I can't say what I would and what I wouldn't do because I've never been in that situation. I think that's what makes the Twilight Zone so great, is that it puts people in position that you think about, but you've never been in that position for the most part of these episodes. Yeah. And I think that's a wonderful thing that Rod Serling did. Yeah. And it really opens up your imagination and makes you think about, hey, what would I do in this situation? What I wouldn't do? Is it right? Is it wrong? And I think it's a great way of storytelling that he gave us.
Yep. Absolutely.
So there you have it. That is episode, I believe it's number 15. I shot an arrow into the air. 15. And I think that's a wrap on this episode. And Eric, take it away.
And cut.